All right, I have actually 5:59, and I think we're ready to start the meeting. And Jessica, if you would start with roll call, please.
Absolutely. Joe Pictionary.
Here.
Brittany De Alicante.
Here.
Barry Lind.
Here.
Michael Bean.
Here.
Isa Avian. Jack Martin. He was
Is Mike
here.
all
on?
right.
He's
See him. I
muted.
saw the wave.
He's here.
Terry Dillon.
I'm here.
Johnny Kirshenman.
Present.
Jen McCauley. Perfect timing. And Eric Adams. Again. Perfect timing. Welcome. All right, roll call is complete.
Perfect. Thank you, Jessica. We thought tonight that we would begin even before approving minutes, saying welcome to our new interim chief, Shearer, and wanted just to have him take some time tonight to begin by just introducing himself. I know that we're glad to welcome him and get to know him and work with him. And so, Chief, if you want to just take some time, share with us a little bit about yourself and whatever you think is great for us to know and hear, and we can start in that way, please.
Appreciate the warm welcome. Thank you. So I want to take the opportunity to introduce myself. I think some of you were at the swearing in a week ago. This is my 7th day in the job. So I've dove in head first, trying to soak up as much as I can. I left my previous position at the Portland Police Bureau in August of 2020. I retired there as Assistant Chief of Police after over 28 years. I agreed to step into this role as the interim Chief of Police for probably at least 6 months, maybe a little longer than that, but that's what I agreed to do to help provide some leadership and guidance during this time of transition that we're in the middle of right now. When I left the Portland Police Bureau as Assistant Chief, I oversaw our investigations branch, which basically was responsible for all the police resources of the department outside of the uniform patrol. So I oversaw detectives and some different specialty units, investigative units, and things like that. Throughout the course of my career, I've been a patrol sergeant, I've been an investigator, I've been a tactical officer, I've been an instructor of a number of different things. So I think I have a depth of experience in patrol, and something I take great pride in is I consider myself an operational line level member of that department for probably the first 18 plus years of my career. So I have a true understanding and respect for the work that we have the men and women of law enforcement and the Springfield Police Department, a true respect for what we ask them to go out and do for this community on a daily basis. And I think that allows me to have a perspective different than some administrators might have, because I spent a big portion of my career doing the work on the line. I think I would describe my leadership style as authentic and collaborative. Anything that I do, I think I make it perfectly clear to people why I do it. And when I say it's collaborative, it's because I want to hear the voice from as many people as I can before we make a decision that impacts this community and this police department. I want to give voice to the people inside the police department, hear what their concerns are. I definitely need to give voice to all segments of the community, not just one or two. I mean, I want to hear everything. I think this group, from what I understand, is a great opportunity to really kind of take the temperature of the community and see what their concerns are, so we can bring those back and make adjustments as necessary. So that's a little bit about who I am, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Did anyone have any questions they wanted to ask Chief tonight at this point?
Only been 1 week. Good luck. I wish you luck. You have come in, what as Shakespeare said, the tempest in the storm is. I'll be real interested to see how it progresses over the next few months, and would love to be an ally and partner with you to do good things.
Appreciate that. Thank you. There's a lot of great people I've found out in the community and in this department that I've learned just in the few days that I've been here and the warm welcome I've received. So I'm excited about it. Looking forward to it.
All right, then. Anything else from the committee? All right, thank you. What I want to do now is go back to our minutes. You should have got those from Jessica, and you've had a chance to glance through them, wondering if there are any changes, corrections that need to be made. And if not, could I have a motion to approve those?
I'll make a motion to approve those.
Can I have a question first?
Oh, sorry.
Yes,
Is that okay?
yes, please.
Hey, Mary Bell advised she would yield her time and send a written statement. Had we received anything? I didn't get anything. Was there anything?
I did not
Jessica?
receive, I did not receive any written statement. I double checked after preparing the minutes.
Okay.
So
Perfect. That's all I needed.
Thank you, Joan.
I'll go ahead and re-motion that
Okay,
we accept the minutes as written.
okay. Do I have a second for that?
I'll second it.
Perfect. All those in favor of approving the minutes, can you just raise your hand and I can get that acknowledgement? I see every hand went up, so we have unanimous approval of the minutes. Thank you very much. Jessica, checking in, do we have folks from the audience that want to give some feedback tonight? I think that I see a timer indicates that we probably will be having folks. So let me just read this a reminder that we tried to get out to the community as they would be prepared to share. The meeting is being recorded. The committee will listen to the comments from the community, but will not respond to public comments until committee response time. The meeting minutes will be taken by staff and forwarded to the city manager and city council. Members of the public can always send written testimony to the committee or to city council. Anything sent to the police department is forwarded to this committee as a whole. As we begin the meeting tonight, I'd like to ask the members of the audience to please keep yourselves on mute until you're called to provide public testimony. Public testimony will allow speakers 2 minutes each, and we've slated 20 minutes for this time. If you're joining us online with a tablet, smartphone, or a computer and wish to speak tonight, please use the raised hand feature to make the request. You will be called on when it's your turn. Please identify, if you would, your name, Springfield ward number, and the subject you'd like to speak about. For people calling in by phone only, you are in listen mode only, and we are not able to be able to call on you. Thank you.
So at this time, there has been no indication of a raised hand, except for it appears that Elizabeth Utterback has made that indication. So I have enabled her to speak at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. This is Lizzie Utterback from Ward 3, and I wanted to share my appreciation tonight for the leadership I saw during last month's meeting. Barry, I thought you did an excellent job chairing the meeting, and I was also very impressed with the proposed policy review work schedule that I believe Terry, Jenna, and Brittany put together. Folks have been asking for more transparency and commitment to policy review from this body, and voila, you all went to town in that regard and delivered. And it was clear this took a lot of extra work and help from Jessica too. So thank you as well, Jessica. And of course, I wanted to welcome Chief Shearer to Springfield. I know you're new here in town, but not new to policing. And it sounds like your week has been pretty busy. Over the last year, folks in the community have been talking about the need for a paradigm shift or culture change in the city and also in the police department. And I was really sad to hear the police shooting over the weekend. And I mean, I literally heard the gunshot from my house. So it was also sad to read the incident report. And I was curious, Chief Shearer, if you could help me understand some of the language in the incident report about the shooting. The person who was shot by the police officers referred to as a suspect in the report, but the report never indicates what the person is a suspect of. So in my mind, this person is a victim of violence and is a community member. So I'm just wondering if that mindset of thinking of community members as suspects is part of a culture that you can help work to change. For example, if the officers saw this individual as a community member instead of as a suspect, would we have seen more de-escalation strategies and that kind of thing? So I'd like to better understand where that language choice stems from. And I'm also curious if the body worn cameras were on and in play during the incident. And if so, when can the community expect to see that footage? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our next speaker is Amy Cothran, and I have enabled her ability to speak.
Yes, y'all can hear me right?
Yes.
Great. So back in February, I filed a complaint with SPD. After 75 days, the department finally got back to me. And I was quite upset to discover that the officer that was investigating my complaint was an officer on the scene of the incident. So I am wondering, one, this is a question more or less for most of the board, but for especially new interim chief Shearer, is that an acceptable conflict of interest? It seems like it would give the officer doing the investigation ample reason to do an incomplete investigation, seeing how any condemnation of the activity of Officer Conrad, who the complaint was against, would also reflect on this officer as well. So first, I want to know whether y'all think that is an acceptable conflict of interest. If you do think it is an acceptable conflict of interest, I want to know why. I want to hear a little bit more about your thought process behind that. And if you don't, what steps do you think should be taken next by either me or SPD to rectify this situation? Because this is something that, until I get kind of firm answers, I'm not really letting go of, because a lot of the issues with that complaint are also things that have played into some of the lawsuits earlier this year. So I'll go ahead and take that offline, and I'll see the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Zia Wang. Zia, you should be able to enable.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. I apologize. Yes, we
Okay.
can.
Thank you. So I just want to actually come with a comment about the shooting on Sunday, I think. I was actually taking a walk in that neighborhood, and my friend heard the shooting. We'll think it's a fireworks, but then end up in the morning, we saw the news, it's a shooting. It's pretty upsetting because experiencing that in the neighborhood is just traumatizing and scaring. I read also the post on the police, SPD, the FB page. They talking about like located the suspect and attempt to take him into custody. The male was uncooperative and a physical fight. So it's a very vague, blurring language. What I mean is, what kind of suspect? And what kind of, the uncooperative and the physical fight, because it can be both sides, especially if SPD, the officer doesn't have the escalating strategy easily to escalating the situation, because it's not like a rare for us to see how SPD implement their police force to the people, especially if they have mental health struggling, or they have come from the marginalized population. I really want to hear more about what the SPD training regarding the escalation, the strategy for the situation, And hopefully, the new chief can change the culture of the of Springfield is well known for, the policing and the work with the local white supremacy culture stuff. Really hope to see some change. Thank you. Yield the rest of my time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michael Kavula. And you should be able to speak at this time. Michael, I've sent you a request to unmute to maybe help that process.
Jessica, do you have the ability to unmute it for him as the host?
I don't. I unmuted it on my side and then I sent him a prompt
Okay.
to allow
I'm
it.
sorry. I'm
Oh, there
sorry.
we go.
I think I finally got it. I'm sorry.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to welcome Chief Shearer to the city of Springfield. I'm a 30-year resident, homeowner, and also volunteer for the city of Springfield in various capacities. And I think I speak for the majority of citizens in that I'm very, very concerned with the monetary settlements and the deductible and insurance issues regarding the police department. And I believe that we really need to have significant police reform, both to avoid future settlements and hopefully eventually to bring our insurance costs down. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Next up is Thomas Lawrence. And Thomas, you should be able to speak at this time.
All right, thank you. Over the last year, we have had a lot of issues in this town and across the country. And one of the things that I just really want to bring up today is the idea of the blue code, thin blue line, back to blue, etc. And one of the things we saw that day for George Floyd was 3 officers who stood by and did absolutely nothing. Well, my concern that I would like to bring today is an article that I found when Googling our new interim police chief, where he wrote that police officers should give professional courtesy to other cops and not give them tickets. He even outlined specifically what type of ticket you would have to give to an officer where, quote, your hands would be tied, which basically boiled down to being drunk, speeding, a crash, and having someone file a complaint. It terrifies me, having listened to all of these SPAC meetings and city council meetings over the last year, hearing all of these requests for transparency, the need for body cams to make sure that we're doing the right thing, and everything else entitled to it, to then, as far as I can tell, be promoting someone who is quite literally writing articles talking about the exact issue that we have, one of which Springfield has right now with a former officer who is suing due to him standing up, speaking out about issues in their police department, and was then harassed and threatened by other cops. It's the same type of issue that we have with the female officer who was fired while the other 2 male officers involved in the exact same incident were not fired. Whistleblowers get thrown out and everybody else sticks together and bands together and continues this exact same culture. I would love to believe that there's a new change coming to Springfield, but I consistently keep seeing the exact same types of things. This took me 20 seconds to Google search. How much effort went into picking this person to take over and then try to fix all of these issues that we've been having? That is my concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, that is the last individual who has indicated their interest in speaking this evening.
Perfect. Thank you very much to all of our speakers who took the time to share with us tonight. Thank you, Jessica, for doing such a good job on your end. I'm open to committee response right now, knowing that Chief Scherer is going to be the one that needs to potentially respond several times. But let's start with the committee if there's any response, or if you want to concede just to Chief taking some response that he can, obviously, and I want him to explain this because he'll do it better than I can. With the most recent shooting that's under investigation, there's a lot of limitation on what he can currently say. That isn't, I don't believe, a cop-out, it's just proper procedure. So any committee members that want to share at this point, or should I just turn it immediately over to Chief Scherer?
Well, I wanted to make a response to the second person who filed a complaint, and I don't know the circumstances of that complaint, but she indicated that they sent the officer who she made the complaint about, or the situation about, and I would like to get more information, because that would be an inappropriate use of staff time to do that. It's almost a form of intimidation, but I would like to know what the complaint was and the circumstances, or indeed whether that's what occurred. So I guess I'll wait till next month, but.
Well, I'm wondering if we can get a heads up tonight on some of that as well. Again, I don't know when this complaint came in, so, but I'm assuming it's prior to Chief being on board.
It's been a week.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
I think Amy mentioned that the complaint was in February, and I'm fully committed to looking into that. I will look into that. I have her name. I'll figure out that complaint and see what the circumstances were of that, and report back to the group. And if there's something more we can do to look a little deeper into that, then that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, and I'd be interested in the timeline, because 75 days is too excessive. And the one other thing I wanted to add, and I know there's policy and regs, and I know Patty Prulo, our DA, has to follow a lot of them. But one of the things I've been mentioning over the months is that when there's a shooting, it's of great concern to the community. And the Springfield Police Department is so opaque. It is so dark. There's no transparency. The wall of darkness comes down. And all we have to go on is immediate, within minutes. I get alerts on my cell phone from the local news stations like KZI saying Springfield officer involved with shooting goes to peace out. And then there's a complete blackout, whether or not it was in the course of a robbery, or course of a rape, or whether it was somebody who was had mental health issues on the street. And I know from working with other police departments that a certain amount of transparency will not ruin or destroy a case. And I think that should be a goal, is sort of a certain who, what, when, where, why, and all the other circumstances certainly need to be investigated. But it would go a great deal to healing the community and starting to address things. I felt so bad for you, because every month when I come to this meeting, there's just another crisis. And now I am, I can't say I'm surprised. And I'm looking forward to greeting the new chief. And I did Google you, and I was well satisfied with your background in history. And I can do a thorough Google search, so can my staff. So a lot of good things were in there. But yeah, I guess that's it. A little more transparency in this community would just be essential.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate your insight. Any other comments from Yes, Joe.
Hi, thank you, Chief. Just listening to the questions, it may be helpful at some point when you go to answer Lizzie, for example, is when a person is a person citizen and where does that transition to become a suspect? I think a lot of folks aren't aware of that transition, and that may be quite helpful for, really education of the public. Quite often, people in the public, they just guess, and I don't blame them because that's all they can go by. But I think we owe, not we, you, the PD, we, the city, owe it to the citizens to try to put into common folk language a lot of things that are second nature to the law enforcement community. So again, it's like a person definitely becomes a suspect at a specific time. And I think that just that information alone can can relieve some of the consternation people just seem to automatically have.
Chief, do you feel comfortable responding? There was really, I have about 5 questions there that I think, again, as much transparency as we're able to give, I think is wonderful, and love to hear your understanding of the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I took some notes here, so if there's something that I missed, feel free to chime in. The first caller, Lizzie. So of course, and I know this is not what people want to hear, but an open and ongoing investigation, especially related to an officer involved shooting. I cannot talk in detail about that incident right now. I think you're all aware that when we have an officer involved shooting, there's a multi-agency team that responds and handles that investigation. That team is led by the district attorney. So the district attorney controls the flow of information related to that investigation. Now with that, I'm a firm believer in transparency, and it's going to be a constant balance because the public deserves to know what happened as quickly as we can get them that information. But yet the investigators are trying to protect the sanctity of the investigation, because if we release too much information too soon, that can taint people's interviews that maybe haven't been interviewed yet. And there's a bunch of several other investigative concerns with that. But I am fully committed to working with the district attorney and the other partners involved to get information out as quickly as we can that won't harm the investigation. That's probably not going to always be everything that people want, but I hear the concern, and I truly understand that people want to know what happened. And that was a valid point that Lizzie brought up about just generally speaking, labeling someone as a suspect in something without providing any follow-up as to why they were a suspect. So I think that's something that's a very fair point, and that's something that we can address in the future. As far as the body cameras, we did roll out body cameras, and I believe last Wednesday, I believe, was the first day that we rolled out body cameras. So everybody on the street now that's involved in police activity is wearing body cameras. I know there were several other questions here. You want me to go through and kind of just hit all the notes that I made, try to touch
Yeah,
on?
why don't you, if you're comfortable, respond to the notes you have, and then the committee can follow up if we felt like there's something else to add to that.
Sure. I think I mentioned already that the concern that Amy shared about the timeline and the potential of one of the people involved in the incident doing the investigation. I'm not familiar with that incident at all, but I'm committed to looking at that and try to answer those questions and get that back to the group and reviewing it further if that's necessary. Somebody mentioned something specifically about de-escalation. In our new use of force policy that was written into policy shortly before my arrival, there is a specific section in there speaking to de-escalation. So that is part of the new use of force policy. That is part of what is expected of the police officers when they go out, is to try to de-escalate situations when possible to avoid using higher levels of force. Michael brought up a concern about the insurance costs and the deductible, and that is top of mind for me as well. I mean, there's been a lot that's gone on in the past year and months leading up to where we are today. That's potentially the city has paid out a significant amount of money, and the deductible is high. And part of what I see myself as stepping in here is trying to mitigate some of that risk and try to get that more in line for the city. And we're going to do that through increased transparency, a deep dive into culture, a deep dive into policies, making adjustments as necessary to try to bring that more in line with where I think the community expects it to be. Thomas was the last speaker. And the one thing I want to say on that, I know exactly what he's talking about. That's something that's been on the internet for a long, long time, and it's incorrect. I did not write that. I didn't write a single word of that, but somehow, somewhere, years and years ago, my name got attached to that web page or something that I wrote that article, and I never wrote that article.
All right. Thank you for that response. So I know that maybe at our next meeting, we would have an update with the timeline and the question about a conflict potentially of interest, so that we can expect some follow-up with that. I want to come back to the committee again. Did you hear something that you would like Chief to respond to or from yourself? Yes,
First,
Brittany.
first, quickly, I just want to thank, I didn't do this before. I want to thank everybody who gave comment. I know it can be scary and vulnerable, and I really appreciate when people do that. I also want to say welcome to Chief Shearer. I'm kind of new here too. I don't know how much longer I can keep using that, but I'm kind of new here too, so I can relate to that, and I look forward to working with you and getting to know each other better. I had two quick follow-ups related, and thank you so much for providing those responses. I think one thing that Lizzie maybe asked was if there, and I'm curious about this too, is if the body-worn camera footage of the shooting would eventually be released, and if so, if there's a rough timeline for that. And in regards to the investigation of the shooting that you were mentioning, I'm curious, you're probably familiar with the OIR report that came out related to the Kenny settlement a little while back. And I'm wondering if, and there were some recommendations for the IDVID review in there, and I'm wondering if you can tell us whether or not those recommendations will be incorporated into the current investigation.
Those are great questions. So in relation to any camera footage that may exist related to this incident, like any major crime shooting investigation, at the resolution of that will become public and that will all be shared, so that at some point, if there's footage of this incident, would be shared, or any incident, not necessarily this incident. What was the second part of your question? I'm sorry. Oh, the OIR report. Yeah, there's a number, I think 32 recommendations in the OIR report, and that's very high on my priority list to address each and every one of those and implement hopefully all of them if we're able to do that, but that's my ultimate goal. But there's a number of them that fall directly to IDFIT. I met the district attorney today for the first time. I look forward to a robust relationship working with the district attorney on that. And I know she has convened a subcommittee of people to address the recommendations specific to IDFIT. And so that will be high on my priority list to work closely with her and keep people apprised as to how that develops.
Thank you.
Yes, Jen.
Thanks so much. And I just love Brittany, and I are usually in sync. I love that. So she covered a couple of my questions. And then the only other one that may be a request of Jessica is, at some point, I'd love to have a time where maybe DA Perlow could join us as well and help the committee better understand, and then by extension, our community better understand the IDFIT process around sort of their general timeline, and then some of the associated timelines around individual interviews and those kinds of things, and how they interplay and impact information release. So the community knows when they might be able to expect it. So if we can't expect it right away, what is the general timelines associated with that? So if that's something that we could maybe put on a future meeting invite, I know that everyone's exceptionally busy, so maybe it's just another member of the IDFIT team to join you, Chief, or perhaps it's just you stepping us through that process a little bit. I think that would be great for us to better understand, and then the community as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great. I would love to have the DA on here to kind of talk through some of the IDFIT protocols and her perspective on the release of information and timelines. I think that's a great idea. I fully support that.
Okay, any other response from committee members at this point? All right, let's move on to business from the Springfield Police Department. Get an update on the hiring and projects, and then we can move into some of the policy discussion.
Yeah, you bet. As far as hiring, we are opening another recruitment for police officers, and something we're doing also, it's a little bit different, is opening recruitment for lateral police officers from other agencies. We're working with human resources on that in particular, and even potentially some hiring bonuses to recruit people and bring them in at a little higher pay step. The advantage of doing that is when we hire someone brand new who's never been a police officer before, we send them to a police academy, which I think is 16 weeks long now. So that's a long time that we're paying them and they're not working the street. Then they come back and they spend months and months with a coach, which again, they're learning, but we're not getting the full bang for our buck for that. Whereas the advantage of hiring a lateral police officer is they're already a certified officer in the state of Oregon, and they can come in the door and we can put them right to work. And so there's actually a significant savings to that as well, because we don't have to pay for the long-term training it takes to train somebody new. I believe we also are going to have an open recruitment for some of our administrative staff, but I will have to get back to you to confirm that for sure. But I know we're down, I think, 9 police officers right now. With an authorized strength of 55, that's very challenging for us to meet the needs of this community. And there's a lot of officers working a lot of extra hours. And it really, the sooner we can get some people here, the better the response times are going to be, the better it is for the wellness and health of the officers. So that's something that's a high priority for us as well. As far as projects, like I mentioned earlier, the body worn camera project is a big one. This has come to fruition, and I'm assuming this group has had some presentations on the body worn camera program in the past. I just have to give kudos to the whole team here that's been working on this for well over a year. I mean, from identifying grant funding to pay for part of it, developing the training and all the research and development, and working with the vendors, to this kind of came to a culmination last week of everybody in the department going through this training and rolling out this new technology. And it's not just the body worn cameras, it's all the cars now have cameras in them as well. There's a forward facing camera, there's a rearward facing camera, there's a camera inside the back seat to record what's going on in the back seat. So this is a huge tool. This is huge for Springfield. There's a lot of agencies out there, even bigger than this, that don't have them yet. I think it adds a whole nother layer of transparency and accountability for the police officers and the community. This is something that I really truly believe is going to help evolve the work that we do and how we do it, and provide a whole nother layer of accountability that I think everybody's excited about, especially the people here within SPD.
Questions of those two issues? Okay. There's a policy review schedule that was sent to you, and wanted you to pull that out if you would, and just glance at that. And Jessica, would you help me on this? Is this something we approve? I apologize that I don't know. Is it for our information or is this for our approval?
Yeah,
Chief, go ahead.
I'm gonna jump in on this just because Chief Shearer kind of joined right in the middle of all of this happening. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so that you can take a look. Can you
Yes.
see it?
Thank you.
So what I understood was, it's kind of a twofold, is that Jenna and Brittany and Terry presented that subcommittee effort last year on this, or last meeting on this topic. And so a takeaway from that, one of them was to confirm that the proposed process for this is a committee process that was proposed, and Councilor Pictionary recommended that we just double check and make sure the process was acceptable to incorporate. And I did pass that by City Attorney Mary Bridget Smith, and she confirmed that would be acceptable as a process. And from there, an action item on our side was to put together an initial proposed schedule base of the policies that were identified by the subcommittee, And I just tried to take a look at each policy on basic length, and a couple I knew of who the subject matter expert was, and I contacted them to see good times of year, just basic reasoning, and tried to incorporate those. And I also, through review of last meeting, noted that several of them that were on the list were actually discussed the last meeting. And I wasn't sure if it was intended to, if we were going to acknowledge that that was a review or wanted to incorporate it in the future. So I referenced it in this way with the full understanding that I may have misinterpreted that. So, but this was just a best effort to try to give some distance also in between policy reviews, maybe give a gap in a month if possible, just for some preparation purposes as well. So there's no offense. So if anybody has any comment, please share.
Joe.
I just want to, if I can hear again what the charge of the committee is, and I think there's some wording, review versus changing versus, I don't know exactly what the marching orders are. I understand what the word review is. So at what point, what is the, where does the transition come through after it's reviewed? At what point who makes the changes and who approves those, and what is the course that policy takes and what type of review? Because it's my understanding too that this is not a policy-making group. So I need to make sure that it doesn't morph into that, or at least admit the understanding of this group.
Thank you, Joe. I think Jenna was going to respond to that.
Thank you so much for making sure that we're all on the same page. First, Jessica, this is fantastic. So thank you for your work on that. And I really, really appreciate the thoroughness and reaching out to the department personnel to make sure that we're not taxing them. And Counselor, I think the goal of this was, again, to revisit what the charge of this committee was. And the effort was to provide a transparent opportunity to discuss department policies in a public forum. So the expectation then would just be that we would be reviewing these and providing questions from our lens as members of the community. And then because they would be posted in public as part of our meeting notices, the community would know which policies were going to be discussed. And I think that there's no expectation. The goal was really to truly understand that policy development and adjustment lives within the purview of the chief's office and the department and the city attorney and the council, and all the way up through the state and federal legislature. But that fundamentally, the goal of this committee is to really just shed light on how and what our police department is doing and provide feedback. If there are areas that don't make sense to us, they may not make sense to the rest of our community, and it provides an opportunity for dialogue so that everybody can understand. Very similar to the public comments around when is a person a suspect or a victim or a contact, or all of those different things. Just provides a forum for our community to better understand the workings and provide input when there may be misalignment between what our community's intent might be and what the current policy is, so that we could provide feedback with no expectation that there is the charge or oversight or decision making. This isn't a decision making body, it's a community body.
Nicely done, Jenna.
Okay, well,
That was nicely said, Jen.
So I'll say it after them. Nicely said, Jenna. I appreciate that. And so it does affirm what my thoughts were. I just wanted to make sure in my head that it's not a stray and it's not morphing into anything else. And I'm just sorry, that's the way I am, but I just always like to have things very clear, and it's especially important regarding this matter. So thank you. I appreciate your work.
It's a good question, Joe, and it was a great response, Jenna, just to explain what was going on and how we came to do what we did. So it's a great job.
Most policies, because we have a lot of policies too, are written by attorneys. And so there's certain limitations, but there might be, from time to time, things that are left out or things that need to be explored. And it's just giving feedback to bring that kind of clarity in the community. And that's a healthy, good process.
Very good. Any other discussion on this matter? Very good. Then that would bring us to our first review tonight on the policy of uniform. And Chief Scherer, would this be something that you would comment on for us? And then I'm wondering if folks have had time to digest this, to give any feedback or any insights or thoughts or questions that they might have.
Well, as far as the uniform discussion, I believe that was on the list that the committee came up with for directives that they wanted to review or discuss. So I'd be willing to try to answer any questions you might have. And I don't know if you review these prior to the meeting and then discuss them, or you want to go through them during the meeting. I'm not really sure what the format of the meeting is. So if you have questions about the uniform policy that you've already come up with, I'd be glad to try to answer them as best I can. The one that I'm a little more familiar with and can speak about is the code of conduct directive. And there's a portion in there specific to body art and tattoos that we're intending to change. And so that's one I'm prepared to talk about and kind of brief you up on, but I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have about the uniform policy as well.
I'm going to apologize. I got cut off completely, so I missed everything. If you weren't speaking last minute, I'm not sure. There was a transition and I went completely off. So if I missed something, can I ask you to am I the only one? Because if I'm the only one, we can keep forward and I can get caught up here. But I show everyone's frozen.
I want to make sure, did other people hear what I said, or was it just?
I heard what you said, yes.
Yeah, must just have been Barry.
Yeah, Barry, it's just you, babe.
Hey, Barry, I'd be glad to repeat as long as you can still hear me.
I can hear you.
I don't know if Barry can though.
I know, I think,
Are you there, Barry?
Barry froze.
I'm really having computer problems. I apologize. And I seem to go in and out. I don't even know if you can hear me right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Johnny, do you have the agenda? Because I don't want to try to lead a meeting where I'm going in and out. Can you continue to move us forward?
Yes, yes. And what the chief said is perfectly fine. If someone had a question, I think if the uniform policy, if everyone adhered to that, they'd be a bunch of good looking guys and gals. So I don't think there's a problem with that at all, but he mentioned going toward, unless someone else had questions about the uniform policy, we can go on to the code of conduct.
Yeah, I had a few questions, and I think, and just to clarify too, what was being asked before in terms of the format, and again, Jen and Terry, feel free to jump in, but I think we are envisioning just going through the policies, like kind of like, not necessarily like line by line, but if people have a question about a line, they can kind of chime in and do it that way. Is that accurate? Okay. Awesome. And I would love to hear the updates about the tattoos. That's really interesting. My question, I don't have very many, but when in the discussion portion of the policy where it says employees are responsible for wearing the proper and complete uniform in the prescribed manner, except when working on an assignment which requires them to be out of uniform, can you just give us a little bit more detail on what that might be? I can imagine like undercover situations, but hearing it from you, and maybe there's more examples too you might have that could be helpful to know.
Sure, and that's a great example. I mean, if someone was, potentially doing surveillance on something during the course of a criminal investigation, of course, they're probably going to be authorized to not be in uniform so they can blend in and do that and not compromise the investigation. I mean, another example might be there may be times when we decide to engage with community in different ways, or maybe we don't want to be in uniform to present potentially a little more non-threatening, or some people might be intimidated by us wearing a uniform. So there may be some kind of events where we decide to go to where we are, just dressed in normal civilian attire. So there's different times and places where we can authorize people to do things out of uniform, depending on what the circumstances are.
Any other questions? Are you there, Barry, or not?
I am right now. For some reason, I seem to be having, I think it's on my end, obviously, but I have been going a little bit in and out. I'm happy to try to keep leading, but I'm just missing some things, and I feel like that isn't as effective for leading. Any other comments or questions about the uniform policy? My understanding is that we would read through them and go through and ask questions as needed, make comments if we had any to make. Am I correct in that assumption? I thought that's part of what we wanted to do. And so have we done that well enough with the uniform policy?
Yeah, I think so. I'd love to hear about the tattoo updates too, besides that.
Okay.
Yes, and I was unfamiliar with tongue splitting, so I've learned something.
Tattoo updates.
Sure. I have not authorized tongue splitting, just if you were curious. But what we did do is tattoos basically were visible tattoos were basically prohibited in the past. And I think it's just, I think as a culture and a society, I mean, body art now is a very normal thing. And there's a lot of people that have body art today that might not have had body art 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. There's people that feel strongly that they just don't like it and they never would get it. And there's other people today that are, you know, fully adorned from head to toe in body art. The bottom line is it's up to the discretion of the chief to determine if this body art is appropriate or not, where essentially in the past it was prohibited. There was no body art, period. So what the language that we're changing to is you may have tattoos, you know, below the wrist, maybe a single tattoo on a finger. You may have tattoos above the collar potentially, as long as they can be covered up by.
You just froze too.
Who froze?
Maybe I froze.
You must be you, because I can
Give me
hear
a thumbs up if you can hear me.
Oh,
Most of you. Can you hear me, Terry?
Yes, can. Thank you. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
but you are freezing, Terry.
Nope.
You're frozen now.
Sometimes when this
Barry
is
and I are having
happening,
the same problem.
it may be helpful to disable the video so that it uses less bandwidth and that'll free up the other piece of it. Might want to try that out.
Who is the censor of tattoos? I mean, there's a lot of, okay.
When it comes to hiring, I have the final say. And what I guess what we're getting at is I don't want to exclude people from applying to be police officers in Springfield that may be exemplary, outstanding officers, but they see a policy that says it's prohibited. Don't even bother applying here, no matter what you got. Because there's plenty of people out there that I know of that are outstanding police officers, and they might have a small, you know, a little star behind their ear or something on their finger or something that can be covered up in uniform. And so I want to make sure we're as welcoming and as open as we can to get good applicants in the door. Now, of course, anything that we deem offensive, biased, you know, anything like that is off the table. That's not who we want to hire anyway. Yeah.
Or gang related?
Yeah, of course not. Of course not. Yeah.
That's where tattoos originated, in Russian gulags hundreds of years ago.
So that's a change that I'm fully intending to make ASAP so we can roll that out in our new recruiting effort. So when there's good people out there that might have tattoos, they will apply here, not some other agency that accepts them. So now we're in line with a lot more agencies around the country by making that change.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this? Okay, I've been in and out. So are we moving to another policy? Or did we cover both? I feel completely lost.
just the first one, uniform. We're going on to conduct. Must have froze again.
Hello?
Did you hear that, Barry?
He's frozen. No, now he's live.
Well, actually, the section of the code of conduct that we were proposing to discuss was actually what the chief had just covered. It is the section specific to personal appearance and that tattoo policy. And so we wanted to include that for your reference so that you had an idea of where we were beginning from. So Chief Shearer could share the direction we may be going.
I had a question on the code of conduct. It reminded me of the military code of conduct. There are a lot of similarities. But I noticed under drug usage that marijuana use is forbidden even in the off hours.
Yes, even though the state of Oregon legalized marijuana for personal use for law enforcement in particular, I think one of the main reasons is it's still against the law federally. And so as a foreign police officer, you cannot use marijuana at all, whether you're on duty or off duty, even though it's legal here in the state.
Right.
Other questions or comments?
It was pretty thorough.
Okay, very good. Then we would move to business from the committee. Is there any business from the committee that you wanted to bring up at this time for discussion and or for response? Brittany, go ahead. If I don't call on you, I'm having real issues, so just speak, please.
No problem. Thank you. I did have one question related to, there were a number of House bills passed, I think just yesterday. So this might be for next meeting, but related to policing that the Oregon House passed. And I was just wondering if, well, first, if that will affect like our policy review schedule, if there's some policies that might be changed that we'll then review. I think that's happened in the past where the certain bills have changed policies and then we look at them. And then also if like there's a timeline for when that might be implemented, I'm sure that's probably governed partially by the state as well, but just wanted to inquire on that. And also say thank you. I know people already said it, but so much thanks to Jessica for getting our policy timeline in place. I'm sorry, I'm changing it again already.
I agree. Thank you, Jessica.
I'll jump in on that. Is I think you're right that the policy review calendar was intended to capture those policies that the subcommittee and SPAC had acknowledged that we would like to review throughout the year. And I think as all of you had also noted, is it doesn't exclude the ability from the police department to identify certain policies to incorporate, or for in the meantime, SPAC as a group to identify an area that you want to work into the schedule. I think it's really just intended to provide a standardized format. So what we will do is likely if there's House bill impact, that could be something that could be reviewed at a future meeting, just as an informative piece. And then if there is policy impact, likely just identify those areas and then determine if it's something that should be brought to the committee, or, you know, just honestly, it just likely depends on the level of impact. But that's kind of how I anticipate it. And we'll probably have an answer for you at the next meeting. It'd be great.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Good question. Thank you.
I'm wondering, just, I know body cameras are just came out, but a sense of how that's going and how that's being received and being used and the learning curve for that.
Yeah, I think it's being very well received by the people within the department. I went through the training myself. They're very intuitive. There is a little bit of a learning curve, but overwhelmingly, I think the officers are really excited about it. Everybody's going out every day, using them effectively, downloading them effectively. I mean, there's a few little technology glitches the team is working through as far as some of the download speeds, you know, because you don't want to come in at the end of your shift and have to sit there for hours while the video is downloading. So we're working through some of those kind of issues, but I think it's proven to be an overwhelming success over the last several days.
Very good.
Had a nice article about it on KMTR tonight about the body cam, so it was very well done.
Good. I have a question about, Johnny, were you going to say
I was just
something?
going to say another step to awesome transparency.
Mhm.
Good, good, yes. Jessica, when can we meet in person so the leader isn't freezing,
There you go.
or the chair, I should say. not the
That was
leader.
my question. Yeah, we're getting pretty close.
I believe we are pretty close. We are following city direction, and I don't think that there's been a formal announcement on that. And Joe likely knows more than I do, but it's one of those things that we are looking forward to as well. And you will know very shortly after I know.
Okay, okay.
In the near future.
I'm just going to go ahead and add, yes, it's being addressed. Yes, we're looking at it. And yes, she will get some information down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah.
Jessica, also, I have not been on this committee for a long time. That I have in my mind that it's been pretty common not to meet in July. But I wanted to confirm that, and then confirm if we do need to meet in July, what is the pattern been, or what's the need of this committee for July's meeting?
I think that when there's been a pause in summer, it has typically been July. That doesn't mean that we have to do that, but you know, I think that there's a balance between workload and respect of the committee members' other obligations and wants and time. So it's really up to you. But July, it's not irregular not to have a meeting in July, but it's completely up to you.
Yeah, I'd love feedback from the committee on your sense of meeting July, which should be July 1st, the first Thursday. What's your sense of that? Joe?
Well, I can say traditionally it's not been, we have not met during that time. Also, city council goes into recess. Many of the other committees go into recess in respect to the summertime and folks trying to get some vacation time in. Typically 4th of July weekend, et cetera, families want to get out and do the outdoors, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that with all you folks being volunteers, which the council really appreciates and city really appreciates, you know, if there's something emergent that the committee needs to meet, I'm sure we can get a hold of you, but I would suggest giving these volunteers a time to relax and get away and disconnect.
Any concerns with that, Johnny?
No, I concur with that totally.
I second the motion.
Okay. Maybe just a thumbs up if you think that works for you. Perfect, thank you. I think I saw everything. Okay, any other business from the committee? Or any sharing you want to do personally? Yes, Terry.
For some reason, I don't have a hands up. I talked to Jessica about it, so I just have to raise my hand. I apologize. But I'd just like to send some kudos to my friend in Seattle whose daughter just graduated from the Seattle Police Academy and will be joining the Seattle Police. So I think that's pretty cool.
Very good. Anything else from, I think Jack's speaking, but is muted.
We can't hear you, Jack.
Yeah, you're still muted.
If you go to the lower left part of your screen, you see a little microphone. Just click that.
Make the cross go away, the X.
The lower left bottom. After over a year of Zoom meetings, I've gotten real good at it. Now I hope to
Haven't we all?
get away from it, you know.
I'm wanting to give Jack the opportunity, but I'm
Isn't he in the station somewhere?
Yeah, I think maybe Jessica was.
I'm gonna run down. just
There you
so-
go. There you go.
Okay, thank you, Jessica.
Rescue
Over and
Help.
above.
Rescue mission.
It's coming.
I'm gonna give a little shout out. I have a backup partner who's running down the hall and beat me to it. So
Aha, there you go.
back on our feet.
There you go.
All right, Jack.
Okay, what my question was, are we going to have a canine show this summer or not?
Okay. Chief, canine show this summer, do you know?
I don't know about a canine show, but I can tell you that if COVID is open and that's something we've done in the past and people have an interest in, I fully support having the canines do some sort of a demonstration or show or whatever we've done in the past. That's a great idea. So as long as, you know, OHA and all the other authorities open us up and allow us to do public events like that, I'm all for it.
It's
I'm
very
not
popular,
sure.
Chief.
It's Terry.
Terry,
If
go ahead.
if you know the answer, Terry, go for it. But
I had heard that it was canceled, and it's usually like the second or third weekend of June. And I heard that it was definitely canceled.
That's all I wanted to find out.
Thank you,
Yes,
Jack.
and
Of
we're
course,
hoping
that's
when
what
it
I heard, it
opens,
could change.
if it opens up, we may be able to provide some type of different type of demonstration opportunity, but it would not be the
Competition.
standard competition that we've had in the past.
Right.
Just this round again.
Mhm.
Okay.
Good question though.
I'm
Oh.
sad not to have had it for 2 years now, so hopefully next year.
I'll look
Anything else from
forward
the
to it.
committee?
I'm training cats now. Used to train dogs. And now my wife's made me do cats. So it's been a lot of fun.
Time for
Okay.
dinner. Time for
Yeah,
dinner.
if we're talking about training cats, I think we're done. So next meeting would be Thursday, August 6th, correct? August 6th, Thursday, unless there was something that came up that required our attention in July. So we'll look forward to meeting then, maybe in person.
Hey,
So I'm going to call the meeting and
August
this-
6th or August 5th?
how about August 5th?
No,
I
I'm
said
frozen.
6th. Thank you for checking, making sure the chair is on top of it.
The chair is always
August
on top of it.
5th. Okay, we'll adjourn the meeting at 7:07. Thank you all for your time. Appreciate your input. Chief Shearer, thank you for being a part of our first meeting. Welcome. And I'll speak on behalf of the whole committee. If we can be of help or support in any way, please feel free to call upon us. Wonderful group of people here, and we'd love to partner any way we can with the Springfield Police Department for the good of Springfield.
Yes, indeed.
Thank
Barry,
you,
can you
everyone.
hold on just a second for me, please?
Just me? Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For
And
you.
actually, Terry, I'm gonna, I closed the meeting at the end of the session for recording purposes. So I'll get you in connection with each other. I'll make sure you have contact information to give a question.
Oh, it's just a real quick question. I thought he said August 6th. And I was wondering if it wasn't really August 5th for the next meeting.
It is. I apologize. I said the 6th. It is the 5th, Thursday,
Oh.
the 5th.
Okay, because my internet kicked out right then and I was frozen, so did not hear your response. Thank you.
You and I must have the same internet.
I'm thinking so.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Good
Bye.
night.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.